Hello again, welcome back to another episode of Homebrewers Alley. It's a brisk November morning, about 34 degrees outside, and with the holidays coming up, I thought it might be a good time to brew a holiday oatmeal stout. This is a recipe that I created a couple weeks ago and decided to try it out today. Not made it before, of course, and we're going to add a few extra spice notes to it that you wouldn't normally find in an oatmeal stout. We're going to be adding some orange peel, some honey, and some cocoa powder. Cocoa powder will bring out some of the chocolate malt notes that are from our specialty grains. So let's take a look at our recipe. So for our specialty grains, we're going to be using a 1/4 pound of chocolate malt, 1/4 pound of 2-row black malt, and a 1/4 pound of aromatic malt. Then for our extracts, we'll be using 5 pounds of dark dry extract and 1 pound of dry light extract. And then, of course, since we're making an oatmeal stout, we're also going to have 1 pound of flaked oats in there. Now our hops, of course, a stout is not normally as hop heavy as, say, an IPA or some of the amber ales. So we're going to start off for our bittering hops that will be boiled for the full 60-minute boil time. Is 3/4 of an ounce of Styrian Goldings. Then at the 15-minute mark, we'll put in a 1/2 ounce of East Kent Goldings for our aroma hops. And then finally at flame out for our flavoring hops, we will be putting in another 1/2 ounce of the Styrian Goldings. Also at about 5 minutes left in the boil, we will add our honey, our orange peel, and our cocoa powder. I'm using 1 ounce of orange peel, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, and probably about a 1/4 pound of honey. And then for our yeast that we'll be using today is through White Labs, the WLP004, which is the Irish Stout yeast. So let's go see how this turns out, and let's get brewing. Okay, so we got our water about up to temperature here. I'm just going to take a quick reading with my trusty hand thermometer and make sure that we're at around 150 degrees. We are. We're right at about 150, 152 degrees here. And so now we're going to put the grains in, cut out the flame. Here's our grain bag with the specialty malts. This has the chocolate malt, the 2-row black malt, and the aromatic malt, as well as the 1 pound of the flaked oats. So we'll cut off the flame and put this in there to do a mini mash out. And these grains will steep in there for about between 20 and 30 minutes before we take them out and then kick it up to a boil. Okay, grains have been in here for about 25 minutes. I'm going to pull out the bag of specialty grains here and disparage them. Make sure that we get all that good specialty grain goodness out of them. So as I've showed you on previous episodes, disparaging the grains, you're just taking some of the hot wort out and pouring it then over the bag and straining it through. And this is going to help extract some more of the malt and sugars out of there, so we don't want to lose any of it. And you can see here, we have already got a lot of good dark color coming out. You can see that there on the screen. Okay. So now I'm going to kick the flame back on, start bringing that temperature back up. To get a little bit hotter, around 180 degrees or so. We're going to add all of our extract malts, the 5 pounds of the dark and the 1 pound of the light. And once that comes up to a rolling boil, we'll add our first hop charge for our bittering hops. Okay, so our temperature is up to about 180 degrees so far. So we're going to start adding in our extracts, both the 5 pounds of the dark extract and 1 pound light. What I'm doing here is I've actually got it in a bowl, most of it, because you may have noticed on previous episodes where when I was dumping out in the bag, a lot of the steam comes up and it gets stuck in the bag. So I thought I'd try adding it all to a bowl and dumping it in that way. and seeing if it's a little bit more, I don't know, workable. Now I'm just stirring this all in, get it all incorporated in there, make sure there's no clumps. And this will take a little bit to work some of the clumps out. And I've got another couple pounds of the dark to put in here. Okay, we're at a rolling boil now, and so it's time to add our first hop charge. Got about 3/4 of an ounce of Syrian Goldings for our bittering hops, and this is going to be in there for the full hour. Alright, so we're about 45 minutes into the boil time. It's a great thing about YouTube time is that it all happens within a couple minutes for you fans out there watching. Well, I've been standing around here for 45 minutes waiting to get to the next segment. But nothing fancy here. We're going to do our second hop charge. This is a 1/2 ounce of East Kent Goldings. Just going to add this in. Whoa! Yeah. Watch that steam. I can't see. My glasses are all fogged up. Anyway, 1/2 ounce of East Kent Goldings. It's going to be in there for the last 15 minutes of the boil. In about 10 minutes, we're going to be adding the honey and the orange peel. Okay, so we're coming down to the last 5 minutes of the boil. Now, if you're making a regular oatmeal stout, you don't have to add these extra ingredients. This is just something new that I'm trying to make a holiday oatmeal stout. That's the great thing about homebrewing is that you can decide what you're going to drink, what you want in your drink, what you want to brew. And sometimes it turns out awesome, and sometimes it's just god-awful. So let's hope that this new experiment for my holiday oatmeal stout comes out to be a most excellent brew to imbibe upon. Maybe the proper terminology might be to imbibe with instead of upon. I don't know. I'm just brewing beer here. Alright, so 1/4 pound of honey. In this little grain bag, I've got 1 full ounce of bitter orange peel. And the type of honey that I'm using is actually orange blossom honey. It's the same brand, actually the exact same bottle that I was using when I made the whip beer this past summer. So I'm hoping this will give it a little bit of a citrus note, and the honey's going to dry it out a little bit, bring the alcohol content up just a little bit higher. The alcohol content will actually probably be a little bit higher than what's normally expected for an oatmeal stout. We're looking at possibly 6.2 to 6.3%. So we'll let this sit in there for about 5 minutes, turn the flame off, and then we're going to add our final hop charge and our cocoa powder. Okay, so we've had our last 5 minutes of the boil. We're adding the final hop charge. And that's just a 1/2 ounce of the Syrian Goldings again. And now we're going to add the cocoa powder. So it's your standard Hershey's unsweetened cocoa powder. And we're going to add 2 tablespoons. I originally was going to add this in during the last 5 minutes of the boil with the honey and the bitter orange peel. But I decided it might be better just to add this at flame out because I didn't want to get too much of the bitters out of it. I just wanted some of the chocolate notes to go along with the chocolate grains. So I'm just going to stir this up for a minute, incorporate all these flavors, and then we're going to transfer this to the fermentation bucket, the primary fermentation. Get it chilled down to 70 degrees and add our yeast. And then we'll, actually before we add the yeast, we'll also take a gravity reading to see where we're at. Okay, so we've got our oatmeal stout transferred over to the primary fermentation bucket, and now we're just chilling it down with our chiller coil. We need to bring it down to 70 degrees before we take a gravity reading and add our Irish stout yeast. So I'm just going to work on this for a couple minutes, and we'll check back in when it's time to take the gravity. When it's time to take the gravity reading and add the yeast. Okay, so we're right down to 70 degrees for chilling our wort, and now we're going to take a gravity reading and see what our initial gravity is. It's a little hard to read with all the bubbles in there, but it looks like it's about 1.060. So we're right on track for where we would need to be. And we're going to take another gravity reading in a couple of weeks to see what our terminal gravity is before we add it to the keg. And now we're going to add our Irish Stout yeast. Had this warming up in my pocket for the last hour. This will probably overflow a little bit when I first open it. Not so bad. Alright. So now we got our Irish Stout yeast in there. You can chew on all of those sugars for the next couple weeks. And then we'll see where we're at. And that's it. Okay, so we're done another brew day. Finished our holiday oatmeal stout. And like I was mentioning earlier, the original gravity reading was a little hard to tell because there was a lot of bubbles going on there in the bucket. But I think it was somewhere between 10.59 and 10.62, we'll say, which the original recipe called for 1.062, depending on how much honey that I put in. So we're right there on target, and we will take another gravity reading in a couple of weeks before we put it in the keg. I think we will probably only have it in primary for 2 weeks, maybe even a little bit less, but I want to keep an eye on how that gravity is dropping down. And then we'll put it in the keg, and we'll keg condition it for maybe about a week with some priming sugar before I put it in on the bar with some CO2. And so we'll check back then, but in the meantime, thanks for checking back with Homebrewers Alley, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers.